Hi guys, it's Eva. Today we're going to be talking about the Trojan War in my personal timeline. A couple months ago, I posted a TikTok talking about the Trojan War in my timeline, and to this day, it is still my most viewed video. I figured I could do a long form video explaining why I put which books in each section. I would like to preface this video by saying this is not the historically accurate timeline. I know historians and research have put a lot of time, a lot of years, and a lot of effort into finding and formulating the perfect timeline. You will not find that here. My timeline is for peak traumatic experience. I'm sitting right behind my entire Greek mythology shelf, and you're probably wondering why I have an entire shelf. Well, it's one of my favorite genres. In Spider-Verse, there's a canon event for every timeline, and basically the Trojan War is that for every Greek mythology. I can promise you, you'll probably read about the Trojan War once in your lifetime if you haven't already. So, with my timeline, it's broken into 4 sections. The first section is the beginning of the war, the second section is the climax of the war, the third section is the end of the war, and the fourth section is Odysseus's journey. For the start of the Trojan War, I want you to start with Electra. Now, this is a wonderful way to start. Even though the book takes place throughout the entirety of the Trojan War, it's pivotal that you start here. This book is the literal epitome of feminine rage. You will never see the story of Clementia and Electra the same again. After that, we have 1,000 ships. This is going to be important so that you can get introduced to all of our different characters, okay? Every book is a different POV. This is going to introduce us to Odysseus, Penelope, Helen, Paris, Achilles. Anyone that's important in the Trojan War will be brought up here. After that, I want you to read these books. Now, Daughter of Bronze came out after Horses of Fire, but I feel like it's important to read first since it is a prequel. So, in timeline order, this would be coming first. Daughters of Bronze kind of shows the life of Troy before the war, which I feel like is really important to kind of grasp how terrible the war is. Horses of Fire is really pivotal to the story to read right before the climax of the war because most of the time these stories don't humanize Helen. She is just simply an object to propel the war and to push all of our main male characters into action. Whereas this book, she has a personality, she has hope, she has fears, she has dreams. This book does a wonderful job at showing you that Helen of Sparta was not just an object, she was a human being. For the climax of the war, I want you to read the Iliad. Now, there's a ton of translations, so don't feel pressured. I read the one by Peter Jones, but you can read whichever one seems the most interesting to you. Right after, for the fall of Troy, read Silence of the Girls. Pat Baker does a phenomenal job of showing the horrific reality that women were facing after their cities fell or were taken by war. I will say it's a bit of a dark book, so if you can't handle really sensitive and harsh subjects, I wouldn't recommend that book or this book, The Women of Troy. While The Silence of the Girls is way more graphic and harder to read than The Women of Troy, both still deal with really tough topics on women and their suffering. But I feel like Pat Baker, once again, just does such a phenomenal job at writing it. And this is a really pivotal part of the Trojan War because a lot of the times everyone's talking about the heroes and everyone's talking about the success, but no one's talking about the damage and the suffering that these poor women had to face. And for the beginning of the end, we got to start with the Song of Achilles. Now, this is going to be the most painful book you read. I can tell you that right now because you've been reading about how Achilles is a monster, he's a bloodthirsty beast, he's not human. But this book makes him human. This book makes you fall in love with him, makes you see him as a person and no longer a myth or a demigod like how he's praised in the Iliad. He's just a guy. He's just a man who wants to live his life. He doesn't want this, but so many moments in his life propel him to this destiny that was very much foretold. While it's the most heartbreaking book, it also feels the most important as to humanize Achilles because I feel like that's something a lot of people struggle with. It's almost like an Anakin Skywalker character. It's a very gray area between they were once really good and they don't want to do bad, but the people around them and the actions that have been taken lead them down that path. The last thing I want you to read for the end of the war is another Clementia retelling. This one, though, is way more based in fantasy. This one isn't real by any measures, okay? but it's more of like a what if Clemenstra could be happy? What if she could have gotten her happy ending instead of Electra, which is way more realistic and most likely the unfortunate outcome of what happened. And while that's the end of the Trojan War, it's not really the end because Odysseus still hasn't gotten home. The myth and the legend himself, the Odyssey, the most famous book of all time. If you haven't read this book, you've probably read a version of it or seen a movie of it because this book is so integrated in pop culture. And we're even getting a Christopher Nolan movie in the summer of this upcoming year based on the Odyssey. Now, once again, the Odyssey has a ton of different translations, so just pick whichever one works best for you. Now, right after reading the Odyssey, I want you to read Ithaca because this is a wonderful retelling of what it would probably have been like for Penelope herself. It shows how she's trying to take care of the throne, her kingdom, keep it from the suitors, while also trying to protect herself and her son from the same suitors who believe Odysseus to be dead. But Ithaca is a trilogy. So after that, you have to read The House of Odysseus. The trilogy goes in chronological order from the time Odysseus leaves to practically the time he gets back, which is why we're ending Odysseus's journey with this trilogy. Now, this book is really good because it shows how Penelope got a handle of things and how she is actively deceiving all the suitors in order to steal more time in hopes to not have to marry someone because she believes Odysseus to be alive. To finish his journey, we're ending it with The Last Song of Penelope. Books 1 and 2 are amazing. Book 3, though, does in fact lose me. I know Odysseus's character is not this loyal be-all man that we see in Epic the Musical written by Jorge Rivera. But this book almost does a 180 and makes him a complete villain. I don't think Odysseus was great, and I don't think Odysseus was necessarily bad. I think he was this unfortunate middle ground, and I think that's why so many tales praise him to be this great all man, because in Greek myths, most of the time, the men are really bad. So to have a middle man there who's slightly bad, slightly good, obviously he's going to become a hero. Now, this book unfortunately has a lot of instances where Odysseus just wants to force himself upon his wife because he's back from war, I guess. Unfortunately, this absolutely desecrates Odysseus's character for me because while I believe maybe he'd think about it once, I don't think he would think about it 24 times, okay? This guy was thinking about taking his wife any way he chooses practically the rest of the book, which made it absolutely sick to me because she has sat here, defended your home, protected your kingdom, raised your son, defended your name, stayed loyal, and then that's how you're going to repay her? Disgusting. I absolutely hate how this book depicts Odysseus, but it is the perfect stopping point for the Trojan War. If you want more stories on the Trojan War, or maybe just want more of Greek mythology itself, I totally recommend Epic Tales Greek Myths and Tales. That's a complicated title, I know, but this book does a wonderful job at putting all the different myths into one book. For the Trojan War itself, this book specifically has an entire section on Troy called The Tales of Troy, with such stories such as the judgment of Paris, the stealing of Helen, the death of Achilles, the slaying of Paris, and the end of the Trojan War and saving of Helen. Now, I think this is a really good book to read if you just want some extra info or maybe just some background on certain tales that you might not get in the mythology category itself because these are supposed to be interpreted a little bit by humans, whereas this is going to be more accurate to the original thing. Thanks for joining today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, like while you're at it, and you can follow me on all these platforms right here. Thank you again for joining me. It's meant the world to me, and I will see you next time.